It is now 12:02, I believe. So if we're ready to begin, folks, we're good? Good afternoon. The board meeting of the Gateway Development Commission is now called to order. Today, we are holding a public meeting of the Gateway Development Commission's Board of Commissioners. Today's meeting is being held in person, but as part of the transition from virtual meetings as a result of the COVID-19 public health crisis, public comments will continue to be solicited virtually. Audio is also being live streamed from the Gateway website. The commission will solicit comments from members of the public who have signed up for in-person comment. The commission is also soliciting comments from the public that may be participating today virtually. A form for soliciting these comments is posted on the Gateway program website for those who wish to submit a comment for today's meeting. Acting Secretary Caulfield, may I ask you to conduct the roll call and report on the public notice for today's meeting? Present.
Present.
Vice Chair Kosha,
Present.
Commissioner Barbas,
Present.
Commissioner Bauer,
Present.
Commissioner Dominguez,
Present.
Commissioner Arrow.
Present.
All commissioners are present and we have a quorum. Adequate notice of today's regular public meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Gateway Development Commission has been provided in accordance with the Commission's enabling legislation. The agenda and public documents pertaining to the board meeting have been made publicly available on the Gateway Program's website. Notice of the meeting was posted to the website 5 business days before the meeting, and public notice of the time and place of the meeting was provided to appropriate media outlets. A video recording of the meeting will be posted on the Gateway Program website.
Thank you, Mr. Caulfield. Before we continue, I just want to note on behalf of the GDC and all the commissioners that we're all mindful of the tragic events that took place in Buffalo over the weekend. The fact that this kind of violence continues to plague our state and our country is deeply troubling to all of us. Our prayers are with the families of the victims and the victims of the shooting. I have no doubt that that those in government, in law enforcement, and in social services will take this as an opportunity to perhaps take some affirmative steps to try to get to a place where these things are avoided, where they're caught, and where people don't have to live in fear of these kind of acts. And again, speaking on behalf of all the commissioners, our prayers and our thoughts go out to everybody in the Buffalo community and beyond that is affected by what happened over the weekend. Before we continue into the public portion of today's meeting, we'll be entering into executive session to discuss contract negotiations, personnel matters, and matters in which the release of information could impair a right to receive funds from the United States. After the executive session, the board will reconvene in public session at 1 p.m. or shortly thereafter to continue the meeting, during which we'll hear from Frank Saker and Steve Sigmund for an update on the Gateway program. I will now make a motion to enter into executive session to discuss contract negotiations, personnel matters, and matters in which the release of information could impair the right to receive funds from the United States or other grantor. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We will see everybody at 1 p.m. or shortly thereafter. Thank you.
Commissioners are in attendance.
To today's meeting of the Gateway Development Commission, or a continuation of the meeting of the Gateway Development Commission. Before we turn to the Gateway Program update, the next item on today's agenda, sorry, did I? Yeah, no, that's right. The next item on today's agenda is a report on the minutes of the November 16th, 2021 meeting of the board. I will now turn to Mr. Caulfield to report on the minutes of that meeting.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Copies of the minutes of the meeting of November 16th, 2021 were delivered in electronic form by myself to the governors of New York and New Jersey on November 29th, 2021. The time for action by the governors of New York and New Jersey expired at midnight on December 14th, 2021, at which time actions recorded in the minutes went into full force and effect.
Thank you very much. We will now turn to Frank Saker and Steve Sigmund for an update on the Gateway program. And thank you for joining us here today, Steve and Frank.
Switching up, and I'll go first. It's nice to see you all in person and everyone in person today. We want to do a brief update on the Gateway Program Phase 1 projects and a resolution that is in front of you today. So in summary, we will give a quick update on the Portal North Bridge project, a little more in depth on the progress on the Hudson Tunnel Project, and a board action you are being asked to vote on. On Portal North Bridge, as you know, the notice to proceed was issued last month, which is exciting news as the project moves toward full construction, which is expected to happen over the summer, as you'll start to see actual construction on that project. And it'll be a very visible project, obviously, as you see here, as it's above ground and along the Northeast Corridor. On the Hudson Tunnel Project, we just wanted to emphasize, and this is a busy slide, we wanted to emphasize that there was very, very significant progress in the last year, and particularly in the period of time in which, since this commission has been constituted. Frank will talk more about some of the specifics listed here. I just wanted to mention a couple in addition, including the purchase of Block 675 by Amtrak that was allowed to happen after the a record decision by the federal government, which had been held up for 4 years, not only allowed for us to begin moving forward on the all-important fan plant and vent shaft that will go there, but also saved the project significant amounts of money as the actual purchase price came in much lower than the estimate that was being carried. In addition, the geotechnical borings, which we have talked about in the past, those were finished since the last time we have been in front of you, which is a critical step in reaching the engineering phase of the CIG process. So basically, this is all to say there has been very significant progress, and that we wanted to make sure that once the project is fully funded, we are completely ready to move to full construction without delay, and that's what a number of these steps are allowing us to do and allowing us to get to. Frank?
Morning, Commissioners. Thank you, Steve. So thank you very much. So, Commissioners, I think you can see there is a lot of work's been done, and I'd certainly like to thank certainly the GDC staff and the partner staff for all the efforts really since we met last to progress all those boxes that Steve had on the slide there. There's certainly been a lot of work going on, both as well with our federal partners as well, who we're working very closely with. I think I just wanted to highlight a few of the areas where we've made really good progress over the last few months. Firstly, with regard to state permits, in 2021, later in 2021, on the New Jersey side of the river, we got the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection issued their permit regarding project-related work in the state. We also received a permit from New York State Department of Environmental Conservation regarding work in the state of New York. combined with the record of decision that's been obtained from FTA, FTA and FRA, as well as the Army Corps permit, which is mentioned there as well, which was another big milestone for us late in 2021. All of the major permits that are required are being obtained, and again, a lot of work's gone into that by many people, partner staff, and on our federal and state colleagues as well. The other thing I want to spend, obviously, the other big area that we've made good progress on, very much with thanks to our federal colleagues at FTA, relates to the CIG application, the investment grant application for the Hudson Tunnel Project. I think as I've stood up here several the media, our FTA grant process. So the good news is that we now do have a rating, actually a medium-high rating, that enables the project to continue proceeding through the grant process. So that rating, combined with the record of decision, are two of the key critical path items for advancing our CIG grant process and moving ourselves towards the I think it's worth just taking a second as to what changed in terms of the advancing of the rating and the improvement of the rating, and why it's better now than it was previously. I think it's important to acknowledge the commitments of the local partners, which have been strengthened, and really the engine room for the improvement in the rating. The Port Authority, certainly its resolutions relating to Gateway have been current now for a few years, but have been considered very strongly by FTA. State of New York has passed legislation regarding support for its local commitment, and indeed the New York State FY23 budget that was recently passed, facilitates the budget director to enter into an agreement with GDC regarding the payment streams that will come from the state to GDC. Similarly, the state of New Jersey has laid out very clearly its approach for funding the financing plan that we've proposed to put in place, including as an ultimate source of funding coming from the New Jersey Turnpike Authority. So being able to give greater precision to those commitments has certainly helped us a lot with FTA. I think the last point I want to make on this slide is that I mentioned and making progress as well. Recently, there was the funding recommendation was included for an initial for $100 million in their funding recommendation for FY23, and that's hopefully the first of more to come there. So good progress being made there. In terms of next steps, I may have already said my next steps. So yes, continued preparation of the project management materials. So what we're doing now is preparing for entry into the risk assessment phase, or commencing the risk assessment phase, which will lead us to hopefully enter into the engineering phase with FTA. So a lot of work going into the preparation of those materials, and indeed, already sharing some of that material with FTA. We'll I think you're remiss of me not to mention the bipartisan infrastructure law. I can't believe I got this far without doing so, but obviously that's a big impact on our project, both in terms of the size of the relevant grant headings for the Hudson Tunnel Project, but then also the sort of the breadth of those headings as well. I've mentioned several times here the capital investment grant heading that FTA manages. just that heading alone has increased, not quite, but almost doubled in size in terms of on an annual basis for the next year. So obviously for our project, which is obviously planning to be a big user of those funds, that's hugely important. But in addition, additional headings that the tunnel and other aspects of the Gateway program can take advantage of are also relevant, whether it be the mega arrangements, whether it be federal state partnership money. There's a number of headings that this tunnel is suitable for, and certainly we'll be looking and the Gateway program generally, and we'll be looking to take advantage of. Finally, I'll mention that we are continuing working on with Build America Bureau, which will be the provider of the loans that we're seeking to apply for. So we've been preparing material for Build America Bureau. So what I was describing to you before in terms of the commitments from New York, from New Jersey, from the Port Authority, getting that greater precision on what their support is allows us to then prepare the material that we need for Build America Bureau, as well as obviously for FTA as well. So that work is continuing apace now as well. Thank you, Commissioners. It's Steve.
So just lastly, today staff is asking you to consider a resolution that is advancing the process for the hiring of a CEO, which, as all of you know, is a statutorily required position under the Gateway Commission Act. And so we are asking you to consider that resolution. And with that, we thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you, Frank, Steve. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all of your hard work. Any questions or comments from any of the commissioners? That being the case, prior to voting on today's action items, I note for the record that the Commission has solicited in-person and virtual comments from the public in advance of and during today's meeting. A form for soliciting these comments was posted on the GDC website in advance of the meeting, and members of the public attending in person also had an opportunity to register today when arriving. The comment form for the virtual participation was available throughout today's meeting. Virtual comments received by 5 p.m. on Sunday, May 15th, 2022, of which there are 2, have been distributed to the board and posted on the Gateway Program website in advance of today's meeting. Additional virtual comments received during today's meeting will be distributed to the board and posted on the Gateway Program website for today's meeting. All public comments received will also be filed in the Commission's record. Mr. Caulfield, we will now conduct the public comment period for those speakers who have registered in person today, and welcome back to everybody. Ed, all yours.
Thanks, Co-Chair. Today we have 2 registered speakers. In order to give everyone an opportunity to be heard, we request you limit your comments to 3 minutes. In accordance with the GDC open meetings policy, the public comment period may be limited to 30 minutes. The first speaker is Brian Fritsch from Build Gateway Coalition.
Hello, Mr. Fritsch.
Good afternoon. I'm Brian Fritsch, Regional Plan Association's Communications Director and the campaign manager for the Build Gateway Now Coalition. Build Gateway Now is a coalition of over 50 labor, business. The Gateway program is the nation's most urgent infrastructure project. RPA and the coalition encouraged the Gateway Development Commission to advance the appointment of Chris Kaluri as its new CEO. Chris has an impressive and extensive background in delivering on major infrastructure projects, and we believe he is an excellent choice for this role. His hiring will also mark a crucial step in moving forward on the full funding agreement for the Hudson GDC and an updated rating for the project from the federal government being secured nearly 4 months ago. We must take advantage of this moment. At RPA Centennial Assembly just over a week ago, we brought together over 600 guests to celebrate 100 years of RPA and discuss the region's future. Even in that context, the Gateway program stood out as Governors Hochul and Murphy announced the nomination of Chris as the next CEO and committed to moving the project forward through a renewed partnership between the states. To close the proceedings, Senate Majority Schumer reiterated the great need for the project multiple times, urging us all to set aside our differences and get it done, to not bicker over a million little things, different alignments, and a million little questions, while laying out his 3-point plan for moving the project forward as quickly as possible through renewed cooperation between the many project partners. To support those goals, RPA has been researching what the post-COVID economy will look like in the region, including looking at the new patterns of work from home, coupled with the level of job and population growth in the region in order Hudson travel broadly and specifically with Gateway to answer the question of whether or not the Gateway program is still needed. By now, I hope we are all familiar with the catastrophic economic and environmental impacts that a partial shutdown of the North River Tunnel would entail. In our report, are a preventable crisis and the enormous economic benefits that building a new tunnel will create. We hope and expect that our forthcoming report will have a similar impact with those speculating about the post-COVID future for the region and what it means for the future of this program. RPA looks forward to discussing this effort in more detail with you, should you be interested, and sharing the report with you very soon. Thank you very much to the Gateway Development Commission for your continued leadership and for opening the floor to public comments today. It's great to be back in person, and we look forward to working with you all and with Chris to make the full funding agreement for the Hudson Tunnel happen as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will note that in the time we've been away that we have come up apparently with an innovation. Which for those who are not here in person but listening, I can just tell you I am watching literally about 15 different clocks tick down. And I am feeling more anxiety about this than I was while watching the Rangers game last night. So in any event, to those speakers, I can assure you nothing's going to happen if it gets to zero. There will be no explosion, and you will not tension that, you know, some might argue has made it a more suspenseful meeting, at least for me. Anyway, I'll turn it back to Ed.
Thank you. The next speaker is Joseph Clift.
Welcome back.
Oh, I do have a shot clock.
You do have a shot clock.
Let me get to it. Good afternoon. My name is Joe Clift. I'm past director of planning for the Long Island Railroad and a longtime advocate for improved, affordable Trans-Hudson passenger rail mobility. I go back to 2004, 18 years ago. That's a long time. My topic today is selection of the commissioner's leader, your CEO. Your agenda includes action item 52201, resolution regarding chief executive officer, which I interpret to mean approval of Chris Calori, proposed, not nominated by the governors Hochul and Murphy for this position. I see at about 11 o'clock that was updated with an actual resolution. There was no resolution before that time. I urge you not to automatically do the bidding of the two governors, but to act as the independent commissioners you have sworn to be in fulfilling the legislative intent of the commission as stated in the 2019 bi-state enabling legislation, which includes both states recognize the urgent need to undertake projects necessary to create passenger rail capacity. Let me repeat that. Increase passenger rail capacity. Under the Hudson River, rehabilitate passenger rail infrastructure, maintain current levels of long distance and commuter rail service between the two states. I urge you not to appoint Chris Calori CEO because he's exactly the wrong type of leader for the job. While he has served in multiple senior positions in New Jersey state government, he is not a strong independent change agent, and that is exactly what the Gateway program desperately requires. In 2006-2008, Mr. Calori was head of the New Jersey Transit Board. That's when Gateway blew up in terms of cost. That's when they dumped the connection to Penn Station, which outraged Amtrak. And I saw Chris, a good guy, but a caretaker. You don't need a caretaker in this job. In its current configuration, the program does not add additional Trans-Hudson capacity until the entire now $35 billion program has been constructed. Yet the price tag is so high that a completion date is totally unknown, but well beyond a 20-year horizon. And the only part of Gateway with identified funding, $15 billion Phase 1, and its Portal North Bridge and the Hudson Tunnel projects, add zero additional capacity for $15 billion. Clearly, the current Gateway design does not fulfill the two states' intent for Gateway, which means Gateway must be changed. I have 4 items here that illustrate the changes in circumstances. These plans, New Jersey is 15 years old, New York is 12 years old, major changes, the last being COVID. You cannot go forward with a project that was designed 15 years ago when things have changed. So I urge you to read my content, and I simply say you need a change agent. This project should not go forward if for $15 billion of public money, you get zero improvements. Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you,
I reached
Mr.
your 4 seconds there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you as always for your comments, always insightful. So I guess no further comments?
Yes, there are no more speakers.
And hopefully we can take down this clock because I'm not sure I can. Great, thank you. It really is quite a thing because every computer screen here, which I think there are 15 of them, have the clock. The action item before the board today is authorizing the service of Chief Executive Officer and for co-chairs and the vice chair to resolve terms and scope of the retention. Let me just touch on this for a second. As Mr. Cliff so aptly pointed out, and despite some reporting, there is no nomination here, and this is not a confirmation. The structure is very different, and the structure is laid out in the GDC Act passed by both states. The board is vested with authority to hire a CEO and other senior executives. But with respect to that decision, as with all items undertaken for consideration by this board and passed on, the governors have the right to look at those decisions, and each has a veto over those decisions. Plus, there is a history here, and the mechanism that's set up here is not unlike the mechanism that exists with the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and I believe also with the way New Jersey Transit determines whether or not they're going to hire a CEO and who that will be. The governors themselves undertook, given that and recognizing that, to make a recommendation to conduct their own independent look at who they thought would be appropriate. And they have made that recommendation. That recommendation has also been accepted and embraced by the U.S. Secretary of the Department of Transportation, advocates, and have also encouraged that we accept the recommendation. So that is now under consideration by this board. And in a moment, I'm going to turn it over to my co-chair to speak for a moment about what we have done over the last week and a half and what we will do going forward, which is essentially having accepted that recommendation, we need to come to terms, not surprisingly. We need to finalize a job. Needs are of Mr. Calori, but also what the salary ability is of GDC, given its current state. And that is what this resolution does. It authorizes 3 members of the board, the 2 co-chairs and the vice chair, to take those actions and to give at least an overview of what has been done since we heard of the recommendation. I'm going to turn it over to my co-chair and also Jamie Barbass, Commissioner Barbass, who's also worked on this.
Thank you, Co-Chair Cohen, and you're correct. This recommendation did come from both governors' offices, and we've spent a fair amount of time reviewing Mr. Calori's qualifications. We received a background check from the state of New York. We also received a sign-off from the Director of Appointments on New Jersey's background check. All of us have those documents and have reviewed them. Jamie, actually Commissioner Barbas and I were in a sort of a subcommittee, and we also went ahead and had 2 in-person interviews with Mr. Calori, one-on-one. I conducted one with him, and thereafter Commissioner Barbas, where we asked the questions we needed to ask on what we thought was appropriate, and of course hearing from him on his experience and what he brings to the table at Gateway. After that, we of course had a virtual meeting with everyone up here, and of course our Vice Chair, Mr. Tony Kosha, and we were again able to ask some of those very important questions to Mr. Calori directly. that meeting lasted after our in-person, and Mr. Calori provided us with references. I followed up with the references, as well as Jamie is also going to be doing some of that work, and of course, co-chair Cohen also followed up with some references on Mr. Calori's work in his previous positions. As the co-chair stated, we are at that point where we feel confident as CEO terms that we will be working through to make sure that everything is official to move forward. So we have been through this process after we got that recommendation from both governors' offices. And I'm going to hand it over to Commissioner Barbas to elaborate a bit further on some of those meetings.
Thank you, Belpreet. There's not much more to add to this. There is one more reference to be checked, but other than that, of course, there's the compensation issue that Co-Chair Cohen just described. So I don't have anything further to add.
Any other comments from any of the other commissioners? If not, I will then call for a vote on the resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Apparently not. I move that the vote be taken on the motion. Ms. Caulfield?
Yes, thank you. Co-chair Cohen,
Yes.
co-chair Graywell-Verk,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kosha,
Yes.
Commissioner Barbas,
Yes.
Commissioner Bauer,
Yes.
Commissioner Dominguez, Commissioner Zara.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Before we adjourn, I note to members of the media that the availability will take place in Conference Room 2, which is down the corridor from the boardroom, in approximately 10 minutes. I will now ask if we have a motion to adjourn. Anybody opposed? I think we are done for the day.